Of the variety of bond mods added for companions, Contagious Bond is one that requires your companion to secure kills. While this might sound like an exercise in futility, I'm here to tell you that your companion can solo a Steel Path survival mission thanks to this mod, and quite handily so. There's some setup involved, so we'll get right to it. I'm the Engineer. Yeah, I should probably mention this could be so effective that my game nearly crashed multiple times over. Probably something to do with 10,000 heat procs and nearly 2,000 electric procs. Buckle up, Tenno. I'm the Engineer. Let's solve a practical problem. You can obtain the bond mods from the 3 conservation vendors in the open world hubs of Cetus, Fortuna and the Necrolisk. Contagious Bond is from Sun in the Necrolisk, requiring 20,000 standing and rank 3 with the Entrati Syndicate. It is equipable to any companion almost without restriction. There's also basically no restriction on supporting me on Patreon either to help bring more guides to you, so sign up with the link in the description for even more benefits. The basic functionality of Contagious Bond is simple. When your companion kills an enemy, the status blocks on the enemy get halved and then spread to all enemies within 9 meters. 9 meters is not a very big range, but still wide enough to have some effect. For reference sake, here is an Octavia casting Mallet with a 9 meter radius. If my companion killed an enemy right now in the center of this pulsing beat, that ring is how far the status would spread, and there are no mods to increase that range. In some ways, this is similar to the Mecha set, a somewhat quirky set which I previously covered as a means to turn your Kubro into a nuke, all of which still works by the way. However, unlike the Mecha set, there is no cooldown on Contagious Bond. Every time it's triggered, all the status effects on the target, regardless of source, are halved and spread in the full radius, even through walls and other terrain. The restriction instead is that your companion has to kill the enemy. I don't know if you've noticed, but most companions are pretty bad at killing. You might buff a Kavat quite highly with armor stripping, crit mods, damage mods and more to try and make it do some work, but it'll still be limited by target management, low base stats and giving up all those mod slots, preventing you using other companion features. However, there is one means of companion damage which is reliable, buffable and reasonably lethal even onto the Steel Path. I'm talking about my favourite Sentinel weapon, the Verglass. The Verglass is basically the Tenno weapon the Glaxion, but strapped onto a Sentinel. It has the same base stats in almost every regard. The Glaxion's not an award-winning weapon, but it sure beats out every other bit of the competition by a nautical mile. What's more, you mod the damage stats on the Verglass independently of modding a Sentinel, giving us much more room for improvement. I ran some test Steel Path missions on Draco Ceres, using Rhino, a Primer Epitaph, Chronon Prime and Verglass to see how effective the Sentinel can be. With Verglass removed, 99% of the kills were melee from Chronon Prime. With Verglass equipped but no Contagious Bond, around 12% of the kills were caused by Verglass. Going further, with Contagious Bond added into the mix, this rose to an average of 27% of the kills coming from my companion. Clearly, the mod is getting some work done. But in doing these tests, I noticed something truly amazing. There was a cascade effect going off. When enough enemies clustered up and the companion killed one, the status spread throughout the group of them. When the next one dies to the companion, the status spread again throughout the group. This repeats a few times over until the status spreading reaches completely lethal. From that point on, so long as another enemy is within 9 meters of an affected enemy, the effect would keep on spreading as it's the companion doing the killing, only now it's via Contagious Bond alone rather than Verglass. This leads to the thinking, how necessary are the Warframe kills? From the clip at the start, you can probably guess the answer. Not necessary at all. So long as the companion is suitably strong, we can let the Sentinel do everything. So let's start stacking some buffs. We'll start with Verglass itself. It's an innate cold, low critical weapon, so we can shore up its stats with a heat viral modding, alongside damage, fire rate, and multi-shot. A Bane mod is also a very big deal, because status damage double dips the effect, and that's precisely what we want, more damaging status effects. Modded like this, we have a lot of both heat and viral procs with an overwhelming 22.8 shots per second. While you could use unranked brine rounds Malignant Force to reduce the viral component and increase the chance of a proc being heat, doing so actually reduces the status chance by a greater extent and just makes the weapon worse. Stick to this modding here. Verglass is simple to mod. The next bit is setting up our Warframe. You can choose from a variety of options for buffing purposes, but my go-to choice is Rhino. The reason being is it's easy to get him to an absurd amount of strength owing to his tank being based on Iron Skin rather than some normal hit point method. Duration is important too, keeping buffs up as long as possible, making it our second most buff stat. Preparation is crucial for being able to cast everything at the start of a mission before all the energy you'll ever need comes rolling in. If you have Amber Archon shards to spare, use those for starting energy and replace preparation with your choice of Augur Secrets, or an additional Former and Transient Fortitude. Molt Augmented further adds to the strength, while Arcane Steadfast can provide free cast to reduce energy demand in awkward situations. You can apply further strength how you please in typical ways, such as Helm of Invigorations, Operator Strength buffs, or even a Nidus Tenno Spectre. You'll probably find the modded strength is sufficient though. For his Subsume, I've replaced Rhino Charge with Thermal Sunder, in addition to the Thermal Transfer Augment. This means we can apply both a high strength raw for faction damage buff and a high strength thermal transfer for a heat damage buff, both of which buff our Sentinel's output substantially. So we've got an auto turret Galaxian firing heat viral with high heat bonuses, stacked up enough to take out just about anything that isn't status resistant. Now, we finally need to pick the right Sentinel for the job. Most of them are unhelpful. Oxidus being able to scan plants or Carrier giving us extra ammo for our own guns is just not doing anything useful. Even Worm with its high shields is unimportant to this particular setup. No, to get the most out of Contagious Bond, we need to return to the source of the Verglass weapon and use Nautilus. Nautilus has this unique mod called Cordon. Typically, it's not that amazing, grouping up enemies without restraining them in a strong but intermittent fashion. It's like a weaker version of Korra's Ensnare. However, grouping up enemies is crucial for us now, as it puts more enemies into that small 9 meters radius for spreading the Contagious Bond effect. What's more, we can combine it with additional bond mods. The Momentous Bond mod will grant 120% of a random elemental type to our companion's weapon for 30 seconds after an Xmas unit is killed. The Xmas can be killed by us or our companion, meaning Nautilus can self-buff its own weapon by killing one Xmas unit. At 120%, the bonus isn't shabby, but much more useful is the random elemental effect. With 10 different elemental effects to choose from, it has an 80% chance of gaining a damage type not already on the Verglass, bringing it up to 3 status types. While the Blast Proc is effectively useless to us at this time, that extra status type or any other would open up the effect of another bond mod, Manifold Bond. Manifold Bond applies your companion's weapon damage types as status effects to its damaging abilities. Unfortunately, Nautilus doesn't have damaging abilities. That's not the plan though. The second effect is that killing enemies with 3 or more status effects on them reduces the cooldown of companion abilities. Nautilus, killing an enemy with either Verglass or Contagious Bond, counts for you killing an enemy, and Nautilus has 3 or more status types thanks to killing an Xmas unit. That's now repeatedly reducing the cooldown on Cordon, allowing Nautilus to frequently group up new enemies as the old ones are immolated. You could use a different subsumed ability on Rhino, namely Oberon Smite with Smite Infusion, to have 3 status effects immediately, but I prefer to have the higher heat bonus rather than high radiation effect. You can help Nautilus along in the earlier parts of a mission by using a primer weapon like the Epitaph to create those extra procs. Further to all this, should Nautilus get downed, a single Xmas kill in combination with Momentous Bond and Prime Regen will see Nautilus return in just 7 seconds. 2 Xmas kills and it'll instantly revive. I've had Nautilus hit a pair of Xmas hard enough that they'll burn to death, Nautilus was killed, and then it basically self-revived itself as the status procs killed both Xmas a moment later. Being a Sentinel, Nautilus also has access to Fired Up. This mod increases the heat damage of its weapon so long as it fires. It's only 5% per hit, stacking to 100% max bonus, but then we have a fire rate of over 20, meaning this bonus is maxed out in less than a second of firing. After that, you'd have to actively avoid enemies to lose the bonus, only to recover it in a second of firing anyway. The remaining Nautilus mods are a health bonus, vacuum, assault mode to actually fire, and Guardian as a protective mod in case you zone out a little too much and react too slowly to Iron Skin running out. So our Sentinel super weapon has status overkill, triple stacking heat buffs, double stacking faction buffs, rapid cordons, and has near enough learned how to self-revive via Xmas unit kills. Bringing this into a mission with a high enemy density, we get a monstrous output with this contagious cascade, followed by calmer moments as Nautilus sets up the next one. Now this does have some downsides to it. 1. You need high enemy density to pull this off. Low density means no cascade effect. 2. Your companion needs to be getting kills. If anyone else, even you, gets kills, then the effect never triggers. 3. If enough enemies are caught in the cascade, Warframe starts to struggle to comprehend the scale of our destruction. Frequently I found that when enemies really bunch up, the game begins to stutter or hang as the effect spreads, with at one point slamming me with a 45-second freeze. The game eventually caught up to what happened, but not without losing a lot of survival life support in the process as the timer kept ticking. This seems to happen when around 10,000 status blocks are applied, which is actually quite common with this build. Think about it, if 10 enemies are in a group and one of them has 40 procs on them, that one dying will spread 20 to everyone nearby. Adding 40 procs to the next one and killing it will spread another 30 procs to everyone else, bringing them up to 50. Nothing amazing yet, but now those 50 procs are enough to kill. All 8 of those enemies perish, and each hand out 25 procs to anything still alive, which will be 8 lots of 25 for 200 procs. In that time, if another group of 10 enemies are dragged in, that's 10 new enemies with 200 procs on them. They all die in a second and spread 100 procs each to anything nearby. Those new nearby enemies now have 1000 procs on them, and so the cascade continues to scale. However many enemies are in the next wave of the cascade, the procs increase by half that amount, and we have ourselves an explosion of power. Oh, and when I say it spreads every second, that's only true for heat, toxin, and slash procs. Gas is capped at 10, so mostly just messes up your view, but electric can scale infinitely and hits immediately on being applied. That means with electric in the mix, we can spread thousands of electric procs to every enemy in range instantly, which is probably where the game completely gives up. While we should probably consider crashing the game a bug, I sincerely hope DE don't try to fix this by nerfing Contagious Bond. For a final downside, while your companion getting kills is all fine and dandy, if you do not kill any enemies yourself, then acolytes will not spawn. It's easy enough to work around though. Focus killing a couple enemies yourself every now and then, especially enemies with explosive weapons like bombards and napalms. Do that, and acolytes will still spawn. This has the double benefit of keeping your companion alive by avoiding AoE damage, and keeping the flow of steel essence and arcanes into your pocket. In normal circumstances, Contagious Bond is an underwhelming mod due to requiring companion kills, having a small range, and only spreading half the active status effects. However, by leaning into it and making your companion Steel Path ready, you can solo Steel Path survival missions even against the heavily armoured Grineer without ever having to fire a shot. If you love achieving ludicrous power through ridiculous means, show your support over on Patreon for as little as a couple quid a month. The link for that is in the video description. That's all from me for now though, so as always, buff lasers, spread nukes, and fight well, Tenno.